microphone. I want to tell you a story about teaching fourth grade math last month at Red Elementary School, which, as Mike said, at least one day a month. I teach all day at one of our schools, some grade level, so it might be kindergarten or it might be high school social studies. I'm not sure I need that thing. I'll get it back if I need it, but I'd rather get out here with you all. So anyway, I'll tell you that story in a minute, but first I want to thank Mike and the Chamber. It's interesting because Mike talked about Scott Niswanger. How many of you know Scott? Okay, so Scott was, Scott's the founder of both Forward Air and Land Air, which was a great niche idea that he had of connecting air traffic transport and truck traffic. So trucks were moving cargo around and planes were moving cargo around, but nobody was connecting trucks to planes. And Scott said, Buzz, I had a great idea and $5,000. And he became wildly successful with those two companies. But the reason I want to mention Scott in the same breath with Mike is because they were two of the first business leaders in Tennessee to recognize the critical importance of schools to what you do. The world changed in the last century dramatically, and Tennessee in particular changed because the world that I grew up in the 1950s and 60s and 70s was a world where you could literally drop out of high school. Most of my uncles were farmers. I had 5 of them. They were very successful. They owned John Deere dealerships and big farms, and none of them had to have any education to do it, although they did. But you could drop out of high school and go work on the farm. When I was a young boy growing up in Alcoa and Maryville, Alcoa Aluminum Company had 10,000 employees, and they made union wages, and all you had to have to get on with Alcoa was a high school degree. I don't know if anybody's here from Alcoa today, but they probably have about 2,000 employees now, and I bet you at least half of them have a college degree. So Scott and Mike saw that the world was changing and that the only ticket for a kid into the new world was through education. And they started harping. Dick Ray was one of those people too. I know not a lot of you like me know and love Dick Ray, retired CEO from Alcoa, who was the longest serving State Board of Education member in the United States. Dick was. And Mike sits in Dick's noble seat on our State Board of Education today and is carrying on that tradition of agitating and pushing us to have great schools in our state and in our region, and we will have them. We are, I hate to use the word campaign, but I'll just use that word for lack of a better term, Susan. We're in a campaign right now. By the way, anything good I do today, Susan Williams gets credit for. She was my 8th grade civics teacher. And anything bad, I own that. We are in a campaign right now to create the best school system in the South. Carly Harrington in our office, who's sitting right here, Carly, raise your hand, please, is helping us lead that campaign. And so is the Chamber, and so is the city, and so is the county, because we're all in this boat together. If I came in here and asked you this morning who has the best schools in the South, what would you say to me? Now, don't tell me Maryville or Alcoa or Oak Ridge, because they're part of our team. There are as many people going out the Alcoa Highway when I come into work in the morning as there are coming in. We are a region, and we will sink or swim together with Alcoa and Maryville and Oak Ridge and Sevierville. We're all right here in our little nest with Knoxville as the hub. But if I ask you today, if schools are so important to today's economy, to job growth, economic development, family income, community health, crime rates, every single thing you care about today, is driven by the quality and quantity of education you have. That's what got Bill Frist interested in education. When he came to Scott's in my office several years ago and said he was going to start an educational initiative in Tennessee, I asked him, why in the world would you be interested in doing this? Because he said, as a thoracic surgeon, I have discovered that the single biggest mover for health is not the quality of your doctors, it's the quality of your schools. And he started laying out the data for us, how education is the thing that determines the quality of health in a region. So if schools are so important to our economic climate, our job development, attracting great families, and so forth, who has the best schools in the South right now? So I could put a few cities up on the board. This past year, Wallet Hub rated school systems across the United States of America. We were in the top 20 in the United States. We were in the top 4 in the South. Charlotte, North Carolina, a lot of people would tell you, has a great school system. They did a very good job in Charlotte. We're better than they are already. If you want to look at our graduation rates and our ACT scores. Now, that's not the only way to measure the quality of the school system, and we're in a conversation with our community right now about what do you want besides academic achievement? Do you want your kids to be good citizens? I hope so. Do you want them to understand and appreciate the arts? I hope so. But Charlotte has historically been considered one of the best school systems in the South, and we're better than they are right now, today. Lexington, Kentucky, which is a city very similar to Knoxville, Tennessee, with a great university there, similar demographics. Wallet Hub had them ranked one slot ahead of us, and I dug into their data, and our data is actually better than theirs right now. They had old data. I think we're better than Lexington is currently. Chesapeake, Virginia has a really good school system. They're up in the Tidewater area, right there near Norfolk. And you know, Virginians, I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia Law School, and Virginians have for a long time invested more in education and cared a little more about education than we have. And Chesapeake, Virginia has a very fine school system. I think we can catch them. I think we can pass them. The number one rated school system in the southern United States right now, and it should not surprise you as business leaders, because if I came in here today and did a blind survey of this group and asked you what is the number one business address in the South other than Knoxville, a bunch of you, I bet you half of you, would tell me Austin, Texas. Austin is a terrific city, and they have drawn talent. I'm going to talk a little bit about talent in a minute. Talent is not evenly distributed. Teachers are evenly distributed, but talent is not evenly distributed. And Austin has attracted talent unlike few other cities in the world. They've attracted so much talent that you can't get around in Austin anymore. I don't like to go there anymore because you can't get anywhere. There are too many people. It's all, Charlottesville, Virginia is experiencing that to a smaller degree. The infrastructure doesn't support the number of people they have there now. But Austin has the highest performing school system in the South right now. And they have more kids living in poverty in Austin, Texas than we do here in Knoxville. They've got lots and lots of Latino kids, as you would imagine, in Austin, and many of them are low income, but they are a very high performing school system. We've got 2 county commissioners sitting over there, and they have a very difficult job of having to fund our schools. 3. Oh, we've got 3 Evelyns here now. We have 3 commissioners here. Commissioner Gill, Commissioner Busler, and Commissioner John Schoonmaker. There they are. And they fund our school system, and they do a terrific job partnering with us. And our legislature has put them in the very difficult position of having to be the bad guys every now and then again by what people will perceive as raising your taxes. Because eventually they will have to adjust the property tax rate in Knoxville. Why is that? Why doesn't the property tax rate just stay the same all the time? Because every 4 years, when we reappraise property in Knox County, we have a state statute, believe this, that requires us to dial down the property tax rate so that the net revenue after the reappraisal is the same as it was before the reappraisal minus any improvements that you've made. You follow me? So if you bought a farm and it was worth $500,000 20 years ago, and now it's worth $1 million 10 years or 20 years later, your taxes are the same. Because we didn't want to raise your taxes just because the value of your property went up. And of course, in the short term, that's okay, right? We like that because we don't have to pay more taxes as our property appreciates. But over the long term, it kills us because every 4 years, the rate's getting dialed down for everybody. Down, down, down. So eventually, these folks have to do something about it. And what happens when they do something about it? What will their opponents say they did to you? Say, raise your taxes. So Mayor Burchett and I are talking to Randy McNally and others about changing that statute so that every now and then these folks can be not goats, but heroes, right? So every now and then they can lower your taxes instead of having to raise them. But that's the situation we're in right now in Knox County. You want to guess how much Austin, Texas spends per pupil per year more than we do here in Knox County? Anybody want to take a wild guess? $2,900. Almost $3,000 per student per year more than we spend. Now think about that for a minute. We have 60,000 kids in Knoxville. That's $175 million a year. Our total school budget is less than $500 million, so it's about $500 million a year. We would have the highest paid teachers in America if we wanted to have them, if we had those kind of resources. I'm not saying we have to have those kind of resources to have the best schools in the South. We are on our way to becoming the best school system in the South, but we probably won't realistically be able to catch Austin and Chesapeake unless we invest more in schools. I didn't come to talk about school funding, though. I did want to speak in support of them and sympathetically acknowledge the difficult position our state puts them in through this unusual statute that was passed back in the 1960s. I want to talk to you about how we're going to create the best school system in the South and how we are doing it right now with the resources that we have. Would anybody question this first sentence that I've written up here on the board? It says, teaching is the prime mover of student achievement. Teaching is the prime mover of student achievement. Does anybody dispute that? I mean, at the end of the day, school has not gotten a whole lot more complicated than it was over 2,000 years ago when Socrates started the first school we know of, the academy, in ancient Greece. We only know about it because Plato wrote about it, which was outside. We spent a lot of time talking about school facilities. They didn't have any. But it was a great teacher outside with a group of students that he cared about very deeply and asked questions of. That's all he did. I was a law professor at one time at Georgetown Law School, and we were taught the Socratic dialogue, which is what? Asking questions. It's all about the quality of the teacher. We know that. The research shows that. But we've got, Mike, how many teachers in Tennessee? 66,000 roughly? About 66, 67,000.
All right, we've got 46 school districts, and
you've got about 66,000 teachers. I'm helping you. That's about what you got.
I come with about 66,000.
You want to guess how many principals we have tell you, it's a hell of a lot less than 66,000. It's about 1,800. We've got 4,000 teachers in Knox County. But you know how many principals we have right now? 91. We talk a lot these days about logic models. I don't know where we come up with this terminology, but every time you get ready to write a grant or do something else, you got to put together a logic model. It's got all these words in it. I swear when we put together a logic model for a United Way grant a few years ago, that thing read like an encyclopedia. It gave me a headache just to read our grant. Here's my logic model right here. You can write it on a business card. If teaching is the prime mover of student achievement, great principals attract, hire, develop, and retain great teachers. And that is a fact. You will not have a great school without a great principal. There is a reason why Pilot Oil Company has been as successful as they have been, and its name is Jim Haslam. It all starts with leadership in a school, because great principals understand how to go after talent, who to hire, who to weed out, how to develop their teachers. Their teachers want to teach there because we want to be good at what we do. The number one reason teachers gave when the Benwood Foundation surveyed their teachers down in Chattanooga about why do you want to teach in a particular school, and we asked TAP teachers why. It's not the money they receive, shouldn't surprise you. They're all a bunch of missionaries. It was the quality of the principal where they were. That they felt they were supported, they felt they were challenged, and they felt that they had in that school what they needed to become great at their job. You remember all that talk we used to do in college about self-actualization? It turns out people really do want to be good at what they do. If you're a plumber or a painter or a carpenter or a teacher, you want to be good at it. So you want to go somewhere where you really are able to become good at it. It's my kids go to Maryville to play football. They don't have the best athletes in Tennessee, trust me. They think they have the best athletes in Tennessee. I remember somebody asking Coach Bryant, when I was a young man, I got recruited by Alabama to play football, and they asked Coach Bryant how he got the best athletes in the country to come play at Alabama. And he laughed, because if you recall, 80% of his recruits came from the state of Alabama. He said, I don't get the best athletes in the country to come to Alabama. He said, I get better than average athletes, but I convince them that they're the best athletes in the country. And then they play the play. Great principals are those kinds of leaders. And if we want to have great teaching in our schools, we have to have great principals in our schools. That's our single most cost-effective lever to get from where we are to where we want to be. That's why that is my logic model for getting us to that. Is there a secret sauce? I would tell you that our secret sauce in Knoxville has been the Leadership Academy. Mike Edwards, I think the smartest thing Jim McIntyre did in his 8-year tenure here, some mornings I get up and I think, how did he do this for 8 years? Because you go about 60 plus hours a week. It is a tough job. But the Leadership Academy that we've developed in Knoxville in partnership with the University of Tennessee was one of the first and smartest programs for training principals in a way that we didn't used to do. The way you became a principal in the past and the way you still become a principal in most places is you go to a college or university somewhere and you sit and listen to somebody talk about how to be a great principal. It's the way med schools once did. That's not the way you become a doctor now. They get you in your clinical rotations, about 15 or 18 months or less than that into your med school experience. You are doing medicine. You're not just listening to it. So we developed a 15-month academy program that has students start out with a few weeks that are with their professors in their cohort of about 10. And then they are assigned to a school, a really good school with a high-performing principal where they spend 4 days a week. And 1 day a week on Friday, they're back in the academy with their cohort of 10 and their professors talking about what they've learned and looking at the research and comparing notes and doing the academic piece. And then on Monday, they're back in their schools. And they have a residency program, in other words, just like Knox did. And then they have coaching after they get out. We have graduated 60 principals out of that program since we started 6 years ago. 59 of those folks are still doing the work. And half of them, every single one of them has been placed. And half of them are senior principals, and the other half are APs on their way to becoming principals. So if you ask me what is the single most important strategy that we have adopted to help us get to this, which gets us to that, I would say it's the Leadership Academy. I would say the other thing that we have done that I didn't have anything to do with, even though I got to run it, was we created an organization that could fail, the Great Schools Partnership. Most school systems are risk averse. They don't want to take a risk because they are publicly funded institutions, and when you fail, something bad happens. You get voted off the board, or you lose your job. So Knoxville, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, about 12 years ago, created this thing called the Great Schools Partnership to be the R&D partner for their school system that could try new, promising innovations out and see if they work in a pilot setting and measure them carefully. And if they did work, hand them over to the school system to scale up. And we've done that famously here in Knoxville. All-day kindergarten started that way. It was started by the Great Schools Partnership in a few schools. It was terrific. It went district-wide, and now it's a part of what we do. All the teacher supports that are now in place in our school system started with a lot of our TAP schools, our 4 TAP schools, and now those practices have spread out across the district to other schools. Our Community Schools Initiative is the same kind of thing. Great Schools Partnership has a dozen community schools now. I could go on down the list, but I'm simply saying it was really smart that Knoxvillians created a mechanism to help their school district get better, that could take a risk and could fail occasionally, because when you're trying new things, you will fail occasionally. You know, public schools generally don't spend money on research and development. I'm looking around at you business people. Can you imagine that in the private sector, not doing R&D? You'd go out of business in a few years, right? So the Great Schools Partnership is also one of the strategies that has helped us experience the success we have. I wanted to just tell you briefly what our 5 priorities for the year are, to try to wrap up and give you a chance to ask me questions before we get to the top of the hour. Our first priority this year is reading. It's Mike Edwards' top priority at State Board of Education. Half the kids in Knox County, roughly speaking, are not reading on grade level when they're in the 3rd grade. Now, I'm pleased to tell you that between the 3rd grade and the 8th grade, we catch a lot of them up, which is usually not done. Usually, if you're not reading on grade level by 3rd grade, your future is toast. The chances of you being successful, graduating, getting some kind of post-secondary going on are pretty slim. But we, I'm pleased to say, we have about half our kids reading on grade level in 3rd grade, and by the time they get on in 8th grade, it's more like it's between 70 and 80% of our kids. So that's pretty good. But we've got to do a better job on the front end, because the easiest time to teach a kid to read is not when they're in 5th or 6th grade. It takes twice as long. It's when they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, especially 5, 6, 7 years old. So reading is our top priority this year. We've got about 5 different strategies we're using to attack it. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach, and I can't give you very reliable data because last year we didn't have standardized tests. I can't tell you how we're doing. I can tell you how we're doing on high school, and we're going to release that information in about a week. I think when the state report card comes out, you're going to be, I think, happy with what's happening in Knox. It's embargoed right now, but the news that we do have will be good, so I know our commissioners will appreciate hearing that. So the second priority that we have this year is college and career readiness. And by that I mean, when kids, we have one of the highest graduation rates of a city in the country. We're over 90% now. Now that's spectacular, because a kid who doesn't graduate from high school is 4 times more likely to wind up addicted to drugs, unemployed, incarcerated, all the bad things. So we're graduating more than 90% of our kids, and we're sending 70% of those kids on to post-secondary. But nearly half of those kids, when they graduate, are not hitting the ACT benchmark of 21, and less than half the kids are hitting the ACT benchmark in any other subject areas. So that's bad, right? So they're graduating from high school, but a lot of them that are graduating from high school are not yet fit to do very much. And we have to fix that problem. The third priority that we have this year, I will call it individualized learning. With or without technology. The Great Schools Partnership helped the L&N STEM Academy create our first experiment in one-to-one technology, where every kid in the school had an iPad. And it worked at that school. It's no substitute for good teaching. But an iPad in the hands of a great teacher is a fantastic tool. And so it has borne really great results at the L&N STEM Academy. But with or without technology, we want every single kid in our school district to have what's, in effect, an IEP, which is what we're required to give every student who qualifies for special education and has some kind of disability. We want to individualize instruction for every child. So we have created multiple pathways for success in Knox County, and I just jotted down a few of them. The International Baccalaureate Program at West High School, and now here in middle school. The L&N STEM Academy, which is a completely untraditional kind of high school, but a very high-performing high school. If you want to go in the library at the L&N STEM Academy, it's about the size of that broom closet. The L&N STEM Academy is one of the highest-performing schools right now in the Southeast. But you don't go there if you want to play football. You might go there and play Frisbee or be a hiker. But I'll tell you one thing, you'll learn a lot if you go to the L&N STEM Academy, and the subscriptions are about twice the slots that we have right now down there. But that's a pathway that's been very successful. The Paul Kelly Academy out at the Knoxville Mall on the northeast side of town, which was a great idea that we partnered with the Simon Youth Foundation and Knox County Schools at the Great Schools Partnership. Mike Edwards was a part of this. We put a high school in a shopping mall for kids that weren't doing well in a traditional high school and that were in danger of flunking out of school and not being able to graduate. And we've graduated hundreds of kids from high school at the Paul Kelly Academy. The Career Magnet Academy. About a year ago, I got my Time magazine, and on the cover it said, High School of the Future. And I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to open it up and read some great new idea about how to do schools. And the article, the cover story, was about co-locating a high school with a community college, so the kids actually graduated from high school with a 2-year associate's degree or some sort of industry certification. And I smiled, because we had already done that. We are doing that out of the Strawberry Plains campus of Mississippi State. And I'm thinking about something now. I know I don't have any school board members here, and my commissioners, I hope y'all don't run off and text the school board. I'm just thinking about this. This is not a proposal. This is just me thinking and listening to our community, and I'll be talking with our school board about it. But I'm thinking maybe there's another pathway that we need to consider for kids who are addicted to drugs and alcohol. We talk a lot about the drug epidemic that has hit our state and our community, and it is daunting. I'm a member of the Metropolitan Drug Coalition, and Karen Pershing can show you numbers that will scare you to death. We have all kinds of people in our community addicted to drugs and alcohol. Half of the kids in high schools in the United States today are regular users of drugs and alcohol. That doesn't surprise me. I bet half of them were when I was in high school. But about 1 out of 4 of those kids will become addicted. That's a couple thousand kids in Knox County right now alone. And a lot of those kids are in our schools right now. And if they get in recovery, oftentimes it dooms their educational experience. And the bad news is the key indicator for whether or not they're successful in recovery is the length of the recovery period. So a 60-day placement is better than a 30-day placement, and a 90-day placement is better than a 60. So what happens to school while that's going on? So I sat down with Jerry Wagner recently and started brainstorming this about maybe, we'll talk about this, maybe the next pathway to think about is for kids who are in that category. Maybe law enforcement acts like they might be willing to give them a pass as to say we won't, maybe we wouldn't prosecute you if you self-identify and are part of this treatment program. It's illegal, right, for kids to use drugs and alcohol. Maybe they're, you know where they're doing this? Texas! They're doing this in old red state, Texas, which I love. So it won't look like Buzz Thomas's liberal idea, right? It's good old red state, Texas is doing this right now, and it may be something we ought to do. So I'm not here today to propose that, please hear that. I'm just thinking out loud with you all to tell you that the way to become the best school system in the South, which is what we're going to do here in Knoxville, is to continually be thinking about how we make school work today. I told you I taught 4th grade math last month at Red Elementary School. And I talked to the teacher of record and I said, what am I going to be teaching? I've never taught 4th grade math. She said, you'll be teaching word problems. I hated word problems. She said, you'll have to help them diagram the word problems, set up pre-algebraic equations, with parentheses and all that stuff, and teach them to be able to solve them. I said, okay. I was scared to death. I taught at Georgetown Law School, and been involved in cases at Supreme Court and scared to death. So I went in and I talked to my wife. She's in bed, and I said, she's a former math teacher. She's retired now, K-12 math teacher. And I said, honey, I got to teach 4th grade math tomorrow. Help me out. She just started laughing. She said, good luck with that. She said, let me give you a hint on how to teach word problems to kids in 4th grade. I said, okay, give me the hint. She said, make the problems about them. So I went in and I said, what's your name? Mike. Mike won the lottery the other day. They sent him $2,000 in November. I shouldn't have done that, really, because they know that. Mr. Thomas was telling us my lottery. Anyway, we had fun with it. But I'm going to tell you what I discovered. Here was the best one. You know, Superintendent Thomas is in charge of shutting school down when it snows. If it snows 4 inches in November on 3 days, anyway, we set them up. We had a big time. Here's what I learned teaching school for one day in Knox County. It's harder than it was when you got out of school. When you hear these urban legends about school being a whole lot easier than it was when we went to school, don't believe it. Because I'm telling you that the stuff that we did in the 4th grade at Ritta Elementary this month was stuff I think I was doing in 7th grade. It was just pre-algebra is what it was. I took algebra in the 8th grade, but I'll guarantee you this stuff was hard. Our schools, I sometimes tell people nobody gets better bang for their buck than Knox County's do when it comes to education. I was a fresh set of eyes on this job, and it was good. You know, interim periods can be great for an organization because you can do and come in and do some of the hard stuff that needs to get done, but somebody who's wanting a full-time job really doesn't want to do it. So, you know, there were things that we really need to do at HR, communications, and transportation. And I've been able to do some of those things because I'm not a candidate for the permanent job. But I want you to know that your school system is doing a terrific job with the resources they have. You know, I look around the state of Tennessee, and Memphis is famous for barbecue and the blues. Big deal. I mean, hoorah. You know, go to Memphis and take a vacation and eat you some barbecue and go down on Beale Street and have a big time. Nashville is famous for country music. Okay. But let's make Knoxville famous for something that matters more. Let's make Knoxville famous for something that matters most. Let's make Knoxville a place that people go for schools. I'll tell you, the 5th priority, I missed the 4th and 5th, and I should say this to you, because the 4th one is about disparities in educational outcomes. We have been suspending African American kids at 4 times the rate that we suspend white kids. Our poor kids, same kind of thing. Our disabled kids, same kind of thing. I've got a buddy who's a great employment lawyer, defendant's lawyer in Nashville, African American, Vanderbilt graduate. I was having lunch with him a couple months ago. I said, Brian, what do you think about this? We're suspending African American kids at 4 times the rate we're suspending white kids. I said, are they really 4 times worse? He smiled. He said, Buzz, race tracks income very closely. So you have a disproportionately high number of low-income students that are African American. He said, if you told me that you were suspending African American kids at twice the normal rate, I wouldn't pay too much attention to that because I would track that to poverty and to the problems that are in homes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he said, when you tell me you're suspending those kids at 4 times the rate, you have a problem in Knoxville. And he's right. And it's not that we got a bunch of racists running around in our school system teaching. It's that we don't understand each other. And so sometimes the cultural cues that we send each other that I might interpret as being disrespectful are not at all intended to be. We got a lot of kids that come in and put their head down on their desk in the classroom, not because they're being disrespectful, but because they've been up all night. Because somebody got arrested or something happened in the neighborhood outside their door. And we now have a partnership with KPD when those kinds of things happen and families have traumas that go on at night. They notify our guidance counselors so our teachers know that something's going on and we can work with these families and not punish them for the things that they're experiencing. But we need to learn more about each other. We've hired an ombudsman to represent the views of our parents who have disabled children. It's a complicated set of laws and regulations. And they're daunted sometimes and frustrated and angered by the bureaucracy that we have in a school system that's large when they need help for their children. It can be maddening for a parent with a child that needs help. And you get the runaround, right? Well, you need to call this office, and you need to call this person and this person. Again, when you're in an organization with 60,000 kids and 91 schools and 8,000 employees, it's easy to happen. So it's not too much to ask to have an ombudsman. And that's what the community asked for, and that's what we've done. And then the last thing is, and I love what our school board did on this. I want to say this on behalf of our school board. I believe this school board is committed to both student achievement and teacher morale. I don't think it's going to be an either-or school board. I think it's going to be a both-and school board. They feel, and I think rightly so, that we had the foot on the gas so hard for student achievement that we didn't take care of the troops along the way. And I think there is some truth to that. They want, and I want, to make Knox County schools an employer of choice for teachers. We don't want Knoxville just to be a place where parents want to come and raise their family because they know their kids are going to be in great schools. And we don't want it just to be a place where businesses like yours want to locate because we have the best workforce in the region. We want it to be a place where talented teachers come to teach. And yes, I have hired a teacher recruiter. Let me tell you something. Teach for America. Teach for America. The last time I looked, had about 20% of the Ivy League graduates in America apply to teach for them. Now just let that soak in for a minute. The elite schools in the United States, with the brightest kids that we have, 20% of those kids have applied to teach for this organization called Teach for America. When I talked to their former executive director, I asked him, how did you create that culture? How did you get those people to want to teach for you? And here's what he said to me. He said, we recruit them like they were athletes. Of course. He said, we go to the ed schools and we meet the kids that are bright and promising, and we court them, and we tell them, do you want to do something really significant with your life? Because you strike me as smart, and I bet you do. Come teach with us for a couple of years and help us change America and make it a better place for everybody. And they get them. And he said, and here's the sad thing. He said, I've never bumped into one public school person yet on those college campuses recruiting. Now, I'm not saying there's not somebody out there doing it, but if there are, as they used to say in my neck of the woods, they're as scarce as hen's teeth. We are going to change that. We're taking a page out of their playbook. I'm not trying to copy Teach for America on other things. I want teachers, Teach for America's problem is they get great teachers, but they quit after 2 years, of course. And 80% of them go do something else because they didn't do anything. We want to recruit great teacher talent, hire it, develop it, and retain it. That's what we want to do. But if I can learn something from Teach for America about how to recruit great talent, I am going to do it. So we're going to recruit aggressively. We're fortunate to have a great teacher preparation program right here in our backyard, but we're going to recruit aggressively around the state and the southeast to make sure that we have got a top quality pipeline for talent coming into our school district. We're going to build the best school system in the South here. We are. So thank you for letting me spend this time with you this morning. And Commissioners, thank you for your sacrificial service to our community. And if my school board members were here, I would tell them the same thing. I feel honored to work for them and for you. Thank you very much.